All right, my friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're a follower of mine, you noticed that between this video and the last video, there was a week gap, and I try not to do that, but I had to take the week off because I was starting to record a new blues EP that will be released under my name. But it's really special because I'm taking a lot of my favorite tunes, reworking them, and then putting them out in a sort of a modern fashion with me playing, of course, and singing. But the really cool part of this is that everything I get from this project is going to go towards a blues charity to help those musicians that need help with medical bills and that sort of thing. It's a way to kind of give back to the music I love and I've been teaching for so long. It's going to be really fun, but I took a week off to do some guitar tracks, and one of the problems was my SG Junior is in the shop getting refretted. So I called up the folks at Gibson, and of all people, the one and only Mark Agnesi loaned me his personal 57 Murphy Lab heavy relic, heavy aged single cut Junior, and it is really, really cool. We're gonna play a blues rock progression here with this, but I used it on the record a bit to really kind of bring me into that single dog ear pickup blues world that I love. I love that Junior, but it's just getting refretted, and I needed something to kind of fill its spot. Mark was generous enough to loan me this, and I got to give it back to him tomorrow. So, you know, can't say enough about Nashville and Guitar Town and having a community so generous to be willing to help out a guy like me just a few days before I get into the studio. But we're going to play a progression that will allow you to play a blues rock tune or shuffle feel by yourself. And it's going to sound great with this. I got my 73 Marshall, there it is, 73 Marshall all cranked up, going through the aux box. We'll talk about the progression. I'll teach it to you. Of course, the track will be available and the tab. And then I'll talk about this Murphy Lab 57 single cut Junior. I know Tom Murphy pretty well too, and I guess I could have reached out to him. But Tom's a wonderful dude and a genius artist. So it's cool to have this guitar in my possession for a few more days. It's going back to Mark tomorrow. But in any case, enough of me talking about this. It's been a crazy week, but we're gonna jump into a really cool progression that will also be in an upcoming course. Could I be doing any more? If you were me, you'd say yeah. All right, let's check out this progression. Let's hear this guitar. I'll even play some solos on it too, but we'll really focus on the progression, and then we'll talk about it. We'll talk about the guitar. Let's do it. All right, so that's a really fun progression and probably a side of my playing you haven't seen that much, but it's definitely one that I wanted to show you. When you get a rock and roll guitar like this, it kind of just brings it out of you. Now, I'm just using the Murphy Lab Junior through my 73 Marshall, and I'm attenuating it with the aux box, and then I'm going into my DAW, which is Universal Audio's Luna, and I'm getting the reverb from the aux application. Really great plate reverb. It works well because it's post your amp, so that means that you're hearing the reverb after your amp as opposed to a pedal going in the front of it. But let's teach the progression, and I want to talk to you about a lot of fun things that you can do in your rhythm playing. I'm going to back the volume down on this. It's great because it'll clean up really well. I love single dog ear pickups. This is a great, great sound. So I start just with an E5 power chord here. Now this power chord what I'll do is I'll kind of mute that 6th string and I'll go 1 and 2. And we're playing a cool rock shuffle here. 1 and 2, 3 and 1 and 2, 3 and. So if you play that E5 power chord and then you release your pinky, you get an E, a B, and a D, which gives you the notes of an E7, but we don't put that 3rd on the top because major 3rds when you're playing rock tend to kind of brightens it, softens it a little too much. We want this to be a little more aggressive sounding. And when you're playing that rhythm, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and when I palm mute, I take my fleshy part of my hand right here, I'll put it down on that camera there, and I do it right where the string meets the saddle. This kind of playing is, we're not playing metal, but when it comes to that, we want it to be tight and sort of consistent sounding. It's a great way to practice right there. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. So you're getting that sort of power chord, 7th chord. And what you have to do is you have to kind of be careful here. You could play, but what I like to do is just play the A and the D, but toggle off my 6th string. Now what that's going to give me is a really wonderful sound in blues rhythm playing, which gives you this sus4 type of sound. So if you think about that little 3-note shape being like your 7th chord shape, you've seen it here, you've seen it in a 9. That's root, 3rd, flat 7. If I bring that 3rd up to the 4th, it's an A and a D. And you get that sort of suspended 7 sus4 sound. It's a cool thing on its own. And this guitar sounds good. Very AC/DC, right? It's a song right there. You can take it. So now when you put those together, 3, 4, 1. And you'll see I like to put a little bit of that vibrato on those notes. Now when we go to the 4 chord, just grab an A5, which is going to be open 5th string, and then 2nd fret, 4th string. Now we go to some of my favorite blues shuffle stuff, right? But we're using it in a more rocked up fashion. We're going to approach the flat 7 and the 3rd of A half step away. Then we'll play another one of my favorite little 3-note 7th chords here. We've done all this in other lessons, but we're rocking it up, where we have an A, a C sharp, and a G. Back to the top. Turn the volume down. Great. That takes us through our 1 chord and our 4 chord. Now, when we go to the 5 chord, what I'm going to do is just grab an F sharp and a B. So this is almost like an inverted power chord, if you will, which is just F sharp B because it's here. Think about that bar chord, and then think about just taking those 2 notes there. So you have your 5th and your root on the top now. And what I did was a fun little riff with the sort of 6th sound. And what I do there is I'll play a D sharp and a B. Now some would consider this the inverted 3rd because your root is here, the 3rd of B is D sharp, so some would call it that. Or you could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 notes away from that D sharp is a 6th, okay? And you get that from skipping a string, going from the 5th string to the 3rd string. So 5th string, 3rd string, no 4th. Slide into that D sharp, Then what you can do is let those notes ring out, because that could be a really cool sort of rhythmic thing. And when we go to our next one, we're gonna kind of invert that. We're gonna go D sharp, well, not really invert it. We're gonna take different chord tones, D sharp and F sharp. But those are all notes that work in a B chord. And I've taught lessons on sixths of this variety before on the channel, so be sure to try to find those. But I grab it here. Now you can do it a couple different ways. Try to let them ring. Or you can do kind of a fun thing, mix it up. Do the same thing a whole step down to A and then back to the 1. Okay? So that whole thing, if we're going from the top, you can grab the E there. So when I do the A, C sharp A, E and C sharp, all chord tones, really from a triad even. Now I grab my B7 sharp 9 as my 5 chord there. And I can put a little wiggle on it if I desire with some vibrato. But when I was writing this, I was like, what can I make a real aggressive, tough sounding 5 chord? We do that. And it sounds great with this sort of really cool, you know, big caveman blues shuffle, you know. And then we give it the gas with the junior, sounds great. Single. And you see, I just did that by myself, and as long as the groove is steady, which I'll make it more this time, like 2, 3, 4. Play that chord, that riff. So I know you always want to play something by yourself. That sounds fun when you're just in the Guitar Center trying something out. So you could take any one of those. And at the end of the solo, I started throwing a bunch of different inversions in and that sort of thing, which all was just tailor-made for this guitar. So let's talk a little bit about this guitar and the rig a little bit more. And of course, don't forget to click the links below, not only for the guitar and some other things that I like to play through in these lessons, but tab and track for sure. All right, let's talk about the guitar a little bit more. So I'm having some fun trying to take the latter portions of these videos to make them a little bit of a gear segment. And of course, with the chapter function on YouTube now, you can choose to watch this or not, but I hope you do stick around. And of course, just hang with me while we talk shop a little bit, because a lot of folks have asked me about that. So this is just the 57 Murphy Lab. Now this is the heavy aged or heavy relic or whatever you want to call it. It's got the killer big old chunky C neck, which I'm a fan of. I love that. I have this theory about neck shapes. And a lot of guitar makers make really ultra thin neck shapes or thinner neck shapes. Now, if you do this with your hand and you feel right here, there's some tension there. And as you squeeze that even more, the tension becomes tighter and more obvious. But if you took like, oh, I don't know, like a softball or a baseball type size, and you did that, there's no pressure at all here. So realistically, I'm thinking, oh, a fatter neck is actually more comfortable to play, because once you pull your hand away, look at, you have more space in there as opposed to if the neck was that way. So I'm much more of a fan of a thicker, chunkier neck, as I think it's more comfortable, and I always felt that way. To me, it just was like, squeeze your hand, not squeeze your hand. And you can start to feel which one becomes more comfortable. But I think guitar manufacturers are kind of like, well, we don't want to scare anybody away with a chunky neck. But in the future, once they start playing bar chords or things, it can get tricky. And that's part of the reason, I'm convinced. Try to convince me otherwise. Anyway, Chunky C, it's got that more nylon nut, and I'll tell you, I did some stuff in drop D for the record that was required some retuning occasionally, but this whole video I haven't tuned at all. And we know sometimes with Gibsons in the past that isn't always the case, right? Really sounds good as far as from a tuning perspective. It's got great checking, great wear, and the bridge dog ear P90 just sounds really, really great. Apparently it's a one-piece mahogany body, super rolled fret edges, and it's just a lot of fun. That's all I can say. But the cool thing is it's versatile, so I can do the Keith. So imagine a telly pickup that's a little fatter and closer to the middle of the guitar. And another thing I hear lots of people talk about, like Phil X, Charlie Starr, people like that, when there's no other pickup up here that's also pulling, because whether the pickup's on or not, the magnets are still pulling, you get a sort of a different sense of string resonance when you only have this one pickup. That's why broadcasters are really cool too. So what I'm doing is just coming out of the guitar, I'm going, I have a pedal board with a tuner and an EQ, and the EQ, I pull some of the low frequencies out for recording because it just gets too woolly. And then if, what you're seeing here back on the Marshall is I have the channels jump. This is a 7300 watt Marshall going into the top input, and I have volume 1 at about noon or 5, and then volume 2, which is I'm blending at this point, only up a little bit around 2. The bass completely off, mid-range up, treble up, because this guitar needs to cut, especially through a band situation. I mean, that's rock and roll all day long. So I really missed having my Junior, but super thankful for Mark loaning me his personal 57 Murphy Lab guitar here. Really cool, a lot of fun. If you got any questions or anything else, let me know. Set up beautifully. String gauge probably a little light for me. I'd probably go up another, another gauge or gauge and a half or that sort of thing. But just really, really sick guitar. Really, really cool. A lot of fun. And with the prices of vintage guitars these days, you know, maybe the Murphy Lab is a little bit more realistic than you think. I mean, with, geez, I saw a 335 the other day for 55 grand. So I don't have that kind of scratch lying around. But you might be able to get something that really feels like a vintage guitar with one of these. Again, I'm not endorsing it. I just think it's a great guitar. And I was just really, flattered that they loaned it to me, that Mark loaned it to me. So that's it. So hope you dug that section. Hope you dug the lesson. That lesson is actually going to be included in an upcoming course. When it's available, I'll put the links in this video too. And of course, you can hit me up and check my website for that sort of stuff as well. And the easiest thing you can do to help out the channel is just subscribe. Of course, there's opportunities to tip and join on my mailing list and that sort of thing. But just subscribe, and that'll keep me, that'll help me making videos on a weekly basis, regardless if I'm taking a week off or not. All right, I hope that made sense. I hope you had fun. Download the tab in the track, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks so much.